everyone, I'm Susan Birch and welcome to another A Healthy New Zealand podcast. And today I've got great pleasure in introducing you to Roderick Lambert, who is an executive coach. He lives and works in Prague in the Czech Republic, and he works with CEOs and other high-performing human beings to help them turn around their health and well-being aspect of their life. Having worked in a corporate business himself for many years, he found that he was gaining weight, had little time for his family, and was starting to suffer from a range of health problems and things. So he found a solution to those problems, and now he's sharing that solution with everyone else. So I'm going to let him tell you his story. So thanks for coming along, and looking forward to hearing about your journey and what you offer people.
Thank you very much, Susan, for inviting. I'm very honoured and grateful to have the opportunity. Thank you.
I think you've got a lot of good messages to tell people, and especially blokes, because I think a lot of women listen to these kinds of podcasts, and I think it's really nice to be able to reach out and talk to some of the men as well, although what you have to say will obviously be relevant to everybody. So you coach executives and you have had your own weight loss journey. Would you like to just give us a little bit of background about that and how you got there?
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks. I mean, it started 40, how old am I now? 46. I forget. I started 46 years ago in the UK. I was born in London, and the first quarter of my life, first 24 years was the usual kind of education thing, school, university, and that sort of thing. And I, at the end of that, around the age of 24, I met a lovely young lady called Martina from Czechia, the Czech Republic, and fell in love and moved after graduating to Czechia, Czech Republic, to be with her. And that's when my sort of, that second quarter piece in one's life started of employment. And after several years in various things, I got into the corporate world, and I joined a multinational banking group originating in France called Société Générale. And I started as a head of HR in their Czech insurance subsidiary, had 4 wonderful years there, growing immensely, learning, also being noticed and being supported. Then after 4 years of that, they invited me to be the head of HR for all their subsidiaries outside of France. So that meant 4 years traveling to places as far as Moscow, Casablanca, Cairo, all the Central and Eastern European countries as well, to help them build their HR function. And it was a wonderful journey, although the traveling also has its health consequences. Those hotel breakfasts, which you can hardly resist, and eating late at night after a full day of meetings, etc. And after 4 years of that, in discussion with the HR function of the group as a talent, as I was so-called a potential managerial talent for the group. The next step was to actually learn my trade in a big retail bank, the sort of the central part of the group's structure. So I moved to Komerční banka, which is a Czech, very large Czech retail bank with 7,500 employees. And I started there as an HRBP, business partner. And basically all my career as HR director or HR business partner, I've worked with senior executives, board members, CEOs, obviously helping them with their HR issues. Nevertheless, this move to the retail bank came at a very critical time for me as I moved into that third quarter of my life, roughly, let's say, and turned 40. I also, when I turned 40, I also adopted my son with my wife. So I became a father. And I moved to this new bank with a very different culture, very different way of working, where the pressure was, notched up an extra few levels, and it was the other side of town, which didn't help. So that's where I got to. That was now 6 years ago when I started there. And after 3 years of that, I realized two very important things. One is that trying to juggle the pressure of being a father of a young son and a husband, and continue a successful career in a fairly unforgiving environment, with all the commuting as well that required, getting up at 5 in the morning so I could get to work early, so I could come home at least by 6:30 in the evening to relieve my wife and take over childcare duties. Wasn't working for me. I was getting ill. I was getting fat. I've got up to like 93 kilograms for my 179 centimeters, which on the BMI scale is 30. It's right at the beginning of obese. I started having some health problems, some man problems, rashes, obviously lack of energy, and general mindfulness problems. Mental health was suffering. And one doctor mentioned, for the first time in my life, I'd heard the expression metabolic syndrome. But so basically, I did some research on those long commutes, listened to a lot of podcasts, got some amazing, this sort of cutting edge science that is now so accessible to us all these days on the internet, and from people like yourself and myself. From people like Ben Bickman, Jason Fung, Professor Noakes. I'm trying to think who else was there at that early stage. I came to two conclusions. One about the lifestyle. Basically, a lot of people, when they reach that midlife in the corporate world, start wondering if it's still worth it. It could be that they're being, they're no longer, well, the 20 years that they've built their career was wonderful, but it no longer gives them that affirmation, that fulfillment that it used to. Yes, the money is nice, the benefits are great, the future pension, etc., the status. But it's, is this really what I want to tell my grandchildren in 40 years' time that I did? If a cynic could say that you're exchanging your time for money, simply. I don't think I coined the expression, but I call them the golden handcuffs. They're very pleasant to have on, but when you want to get out of them, they're pretty hard. So I had my own aha moment, and that was thanks to a wonderful book I can recommend to everybody if you haven't read it, called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. It's a macro history of Homo sapiens. And my learning from that book, the strongest learning, was that as animals, we have simply one purpose to our lives. That is to replicate, pass on our DNA, and survive and succeed in the evolutionary battle. That's it. There is no other meaning to life, which for some, and you're laughing, but some may feel that's depressing. I found that extremely liberating.
I'm laughing because that's what my dad always told me when I grew up.
Very wise man.
Yeah, he was a very wise man. So so that's why I'm smiling.
Well, I should have met your dad many years ago, but because I had to, I had to work this out by myself, and it was hard. And I realized that meant that the world's your oyster. You can actually create your own sense of purpose and mission in life. And it can be anything you want it to be. It doesn't have to be one specific free market, democratic, capitalist ideology. It could be absolutely anything. And you can, pick and choose what you want, or you create your own. And that's what I did. I came to the decision to leave my corporate career, and I handed in my resignation and quit my job. And the other great big aha moment was around the health piece. Thanks to all this, about 2 years of reading and listening and looking at medical studies and all that stuff, I realized that all the advice I was getting from my doctors or reading in the newspapers or magazines was essentially incorrect. Either it was inappropriate to me in my stage in life, more appropriate for someone in their teens who's metabolically healthy, and that's at best, and more likely incorrect and wrong. And in fact, it's all the other way around. And that was for me another huge aha moment. And so I quit my job, and that was in the summer 3 years ago. And in September, I'd already lost a little bit of weight. I was about 88 kilograms. I decided to apply what we now know today, or I know today, it was a low carb lifestyle on myself. And I was measuring everything and weighing everything. And I was looking at my basal metabolic rate, trying to calculate it and measuring all my activity and creating a calorific deficit. But in 6 months of completely changing the way I ate, and also I did intermittent fasting. In 6 months, I went from like 88 kilograms and a 37-inch waist down to 73 kilograms and a 32-inch waist. And all my health problems disappeared, felt much better. Clearly, I know now my building insulin resistance had reversed. And I've lived that way ever since, with a few modifications as new information becomes available. And yeah, weight wise, which is, I know we get hung up about weight. I think the hip waist ratio or the height waist ratio are more accurate markers of health. But I've maintained my weight basically from 72 to 75, those three at 2.5 years now, without measuring anything, without weighing anything, just listening to my appetite and knowing what it is I should be putting into my body for satiety and full covering all my nutritional needs. So there you go. So I tried to be quick.
Hey, congratulations on your journey for a start, and thanks for sharing that with us. So one of the biggest issues people come across is their thought processes and their mindset around how do they make these changes. And we live in this really quick world of everything's a challenge. We go to the gym and we're going to do a 4-week challenge, and we're going to drop all these kgs, and then we can go back to what we were doing and carry on. Or we're going to have dry July, and then, thank God dry July is over, How do we tap into mindset? Someone the other day said, life's too short, everything in moderation. And I sort of replied and said, well, everything in moderation makes life even shorter, really.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, how do we make these changes without, well, first of all, what's the mindset around that? And then how do we make these changes where we feel empowered rather than we feel like we're missing out and we're not participating, and all those feelings that our clients express to us all the time?
Yeah, okay. That's a very good question, Susan, a very complex question. And maybe right at the beginning, I would say that this everything in moderation can work for some people, of course. But especially particularly if they're in good metabolic health, and more likely if you dug deep into that, you might find that they've not been so exposed to our modern food environment when they were growing up, that they already had some good positive habits from their formative years. Fresh veg and fruit from the garden, eating locally produced food, etc. And therefore they've stuck to that their whole life, and therefore that everything in moderation is probably a good thing. Or the opposite end is where people often take up sports very intensely. I have a friend who's a huge cyclist, so he's spending his winters on the exercise bike at home, getting into shape or keeping his form up for the summer season when he's in the Alps, cycling hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. So, again, someone with that level of exercise commitment and passion for a sport is very likely going to be in pretty good shape. And therefore, everything in moderation is going to work for him. But if you look at the statistics, the fact is in the US, it's something like 3/4 of people in the US have two chronic diagnosed chronic disease of lifestyle, and something like 1/3 have 2. So this will work just for a very small number of people currently. So yeah, so then there's what do I miss out? And the approach I take is that when you know what your body needs to get, then you can really focus on that. And so you're not cutting out stuff, you're not restricting, you're focusing on the stuff your body needs. So it's a positive, constructive change you're going to make. And the beauty is that our biology that's evolved over the last 3-4 million years hasn't changed in the last 900,000 million years. It's still the same. So it's still what those hunter-gatherers out in the plains would be eating. And when you think about it, it's all the stuff. It's a lot of the stuff that we realize. It's a lot of meat. It's a lot of dairy produce. Those are kind of the primary things that our body wants us to have. I mean, I imagine you know well the protein leverage hypothesis, and our biology hasn't changed. We're still in the bodies of cavemen. What's changed is our modern day, sophisticated, high pressure, high speed life, and most importantly, the food environment in which we live. And that's unfortunately the problem. So I never once felt restricted. And my clients rarely, they think, oh my God, how am I gonna not eat potatoes? How am I not gonna eat bread? And that sort of thing. And the amazing realization they have after 4 or 5 weeks of following a different composition of their food is, you know what? I really have no desire to eat bread rolls anymore. Potatoes, well, I might have them once every 3 months, when I go to my mum for Sunday roast or something, but I don't have that inclination to have them. I don't need them for my life. And they want, and it's very simple, because your body is not asking you to eat them, because it's getting what it needs ready.
So, I mean, just for everybody, I have talked about the protein leverage hypothesis before, but just for anyone who doesn't know, that is the hypothesis that your body will require you to keep eating until you fulfill your need for protein. And so if you've just eaten a big meal and you go away and then you start getting those cravings for more food, it's generally driven because you haven't had enough protein in that meal. So that's what that hypothesis is about. And it holds true across humans and all other animals. There's a lot of research done on it. I call the body a chemical factory, and we have to put in the right chemicals to get the factory to turn out the right produce at the end. And I just say, think about it as being a paint factory, and you want to make blue paint, but you put in the chemicals for white paint. So you've got to change the chemicals that you're putting in so that you can get blue paint out. And that's kind of how we work, really.
I love that analogy of a paint factory. I use the term biochemical reactor, but it's the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing. Yeah.
And it's amazing if you can sort of get your head around the idea that everything externally and internally that we experience impacts the reactions in our body. It somehow has some impact, whether it be via the brain creating, for instance, stress, or whether it be via the air that we breathe or the food we put into ourselves. Everything, the brain is just a big biochemical reactor. It sends signals down the pathways, the body creates hormones, or vice versa. It's all in conversation the whole time. And as soon as your environment is doing something that isn't conducive to the normal healthy status of the body, then your body will somehow try and react to that in some way, which then has knock-on effects and puts everything out of kilter and gets out of sync. And that's where things like food cravings come from.
And I think like you say, the body has all this crosstalk between all the different organs, all, driven by hormonal signals. And I think there's like at least 17 hormonal signals that are involved in that crosstalk. And then, the fat cells themselves are an endocrine organ, and they produce all these hormones that then talk to the rest of our body. And so that's really important in terms of our craving for food and our sense of satiety, and whether we want to eat more or eat less.
Absolutely, and that if you can understand that, then it's much easier then to kind of realize that, yeah, okay, so we all know that stress makes us unhealthy, long-term stress, and modern life is full of long-term exposure to stress. And then if you can, for some people, it helps to understand, that's translating into increased levels of cortisol, which has its effect on the body of releasing sugar into the bloodstream, which keeps insulin levels high, and that then has the effect of telling the body to keep fat, not burn it, and therefore you start hungry and blah, blah, blah. So if you can understand that, and what then you need to do, okay, no, don't quit your stressful job necessarily. It would do you good, but that's pretty unrealistic. That when you do feel the need, and you put in there, a couple of eggs and a slice of bacon or something, you'll see that actually helps rebalance all the hormonal interactions that are going on in the body. And the cravings is another thing clients say is, a client said, I went down to the cafe, he's Italian, or he's in Italy, and he's Italian, and to have an espresso, and I went straight past the croissant cabinet, and I saw it there, and I thought, that's strange. I really have no feeling that I would like to eat that now, which for him was mind blowing.
So lots of people start off on this journey, okay, they attack it with a hiss and a roar, and they attack it with a lot of great vigor, and then they fall off the wagon, and then they feel all those self-deprecating thoughts come back about, I can't do this, I'm hopeless, what's wrong with me, I'm too busy. How do you have a strategy for helping people through that phase?
Well, actually, yes, there are various tips and tricks, hacks, etc. But this is where the coaching comes in so handy, because you can do it by yourself. It's possible. Millions of, hundreds of thousands at least of people, maybe even millions of people have done it. I did it by myself, just by carefully filtering and gathering information that's out there. But then you're not taking into account exactly when you start changing something, life has a habit of pushing you back. So the sort of maybe a bloke thing is when that you're talking about dry July. So you go to the pub with your mates, everybody's ordering beer, and you order water. And what happens next? All your mates say, "Are you okay? What happened? Go on, just have one. It won't harm you. Go on." It's normal when someone becomes less predictable, less consistent, then the human environment around it starts to get nervous and pushes back. It's an absolute change. It's the basics of change management, of reaction to change. So that makes it very difficult, first of all. So that's where the coach comes in really handy, because he's your kind of sparring partner, your external impartial support. And you can talk through these points as well and say, okay, so next time, what is it going to be appropriate to say to your friend? So I really love sitting here drinking with you and passing, chewing the cud. Today I choose to have water because I feel it's going to do better for me in the long run. So let's have a great time together. Something, so instead of, because it's quite difficult when you're faced with reaction to change, it releases all those hormones, emotions, and you stop thinking clearly and making conscious decisions about how to react. So that can help. Of course, and for particularly executives, particularly now people are going back to the office and starting, not yet, but starting to travel, at least in this part of the world, for business, which is always a scary thing to do if you've made a lifestyle change. then it's once again, it's about knowing what you're supposed to eat, or what you need, your body needs to eat. So stick the protein on your plate. Generally, you'll find, it's about helping them get away from being anxious about it and reminding them that even in your most Italian restaurant, there's going to be a fish or a meat option. And at worst, it's going to be a kind of a chicken salad option, So there will be things you can eat. Then there are little hacks like boil yourself some eggs, and before you go out into an environment where you're not certain if you're actually going to be able to order or choose food that you want to eat, then have an egg or two, because that will satiate you. You won't be so hungry when you get there, and you'll be happier just having that chicken salad because, well, everyone's having a huge pizza or a big bowl of pasta, because you won't be feeling so hungry. I mean, hunger makes us want food. That's how we've survived all these millions of years. It makes your decision making less conscious, less aware. So if you're not so hungry, you can still enjoy yourself with your mates, eat something with them. You're just going to have something different because you're not so hungry. So that's a little hack, for instance.
So how supportive are men of other men making these changes? It's interesting in the female world that often the support isn't there. That same, just what you described earlier, oh, come on, one won't hurt you. There's almost sometimes a little bit of a sabotage going on with family and friends, probably for the same reasons. How are men about that? Will men deliberately sabotage, or will they get behind and support each other?
I would not particularly distinguish much between when a man decides to go, change their eating lifestyle and a woman changes their eating lifestyle. I think maybe there's perhaps this kind of stereotypical family onus that the woman is the kind of the home keeper and is making the meal. So if the lady of the house changes the way they eat, then there may be fear from their family that they're going to have to start eating like their, mummy. Maybe that there's that aspect certainly would be interesting to explore. But in general, one of the things I always say right at the beginning is, okay, so have you talked to your partner about this? Your partner is going to be your either your biggest enemy or your best friend in this, about your goals, because the goals are important. It's not about necessarily losing weight. I have clients who come and say, it's not so much the weight, I'm starting to get worried. There's a history of chronic disease in my family. I'm reaching that age. I've got the first signs of something. I want to be able to live not just a long, but a healthy life and enjoy my children, grandchildren, etc. So it's important that they have this conversation at home. I know from my own experience, I didn't. I jumped into it, and my wife was very concerned for me. It's concern for me. It's not like that they're trying to sabotage you deliberately. It's concern for your well-being, and particularly in a world where we're taught that fat is bad, and suddenly I'm eating lard, cooking stuff in lard, and eating a much higher proportion of meat and fat and eggs and cheese and stuff.
So then you're going to be told you're going to have kidney. Yeah, you're going to have kidney failure and osteoporosis, and you're going to get cancer, and you're going to have heart disease,
heart attack,
and trying to reassure family and introduce family into what you've learned or what your clients are learning is really difficult, because they can be quite resistant to the new ideas.
Still 2.5 years later, I have an in-law, a relative, who just recently we saw each other for the first time in several months, etc., because of lockdown, etc. And although I haven't changed in those 2.5 years, we were standing there. One of the first thing he said to me was, "You look like death." And I thought this was really ironic, because he knew me from the time when I was, had a big belly and was chunky. Of course, because we've known each other for 20 years. But I thought it was ironic because he himself has been, since about his mid-20s, obese. and he's got type 2 diabetes with complications. And he's had also, I won't even go into his medical history the last 2-3 years, but he's on that very unfortunate slippery slope to flatlining basically at some point soon. So I was kind of found it ironic that I think it's a mindset where we see now a large proportion of the population is bulky, and we start to normalize it, and that's the standard. So when you lose weight and make that sudden change, it's worthy of comment. God knows what's going on in his psyche about all that, whether it be envy, whether he's because he's tried and he can't do it. I don't know what's going on there, and it doesn't really, it's not my, I wouldn't want to really try and assume, but I found it really weird. If someone puts on weight, you're rarely going to say, oh, you've put on a bit of weight, unless it's a really good friend or something. But when you lose weight, people start asking, even people you don't know so well, are you okay? Are you sick? It's so losing weight to lean. I'm 73 kilograms. If you're going to use BMI as a measure, I'm actually above the midpoint of ideal weight. So I'm closer to overweight than I am to underweight via BMI. According to BMI, which I don't think is the best measure, I should be about 5 kilograms lighter than I am. I don't want to be, because then I really would be scrawny, and I don't want that. So it's out of concern. It's the fear of this new sort of unpredictable person that they thought they knew.
Yeah.
There could be all sorts of kind of envy, and also it's just simply, it doesn't fit in. When you go anywhere you go, you're offered food that's ultra processed, highly refined, high in carbohydrates and fat, because that's kind of that's the drug that that really switches on our reward systems in the brain and makes us happy for a moment. And that's what we've become addicted to. And when you think, oh, I can't eat any of this stuff, I'll just have the, in this country, it's fried cheese, without the fries. Then they sort of look at you weirdly. Fried cheese without the fries? What are you talking about? Anyway, but sorry, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, all those highly processed foods are what are considered hospitable, and that's being, that's putting on a good meal, or, whether it's a wedding or a funeral or a birthday party, or, that's considered appropriate. And
yeah, exactly. And it's very difficult. You're going to visit your in-laws, you're going to a wedding, you're going to friends for dinner, and they've put on this, wonderful, they spent hours cooking a wonderful meal for you, and then you just want to, I recommend to everybody, you always have a little portion just to be able to express how wonderful it is, how good it is, how tasty it is, and what, so they get that affirmation. But also if they're friends, you can call them up a few days beforehand and say, hey, look, I don't know what you're planning to cook, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm trying to sort out my health, and so I there's some things that I prefer not to eat and some things that I prefer to prioritize. Would it be possible to accommodate that in some way, whether it be something, or should I bring my own food, for instance, so offer some options, but to have this adult discussion calmly, because when you're sitting down to the dinner and you say, oh no, sorry, I'm not going to have that, and oh no, I'm not going to have that, etc., then you're going to start offending people, and then you're never going to have any kind of constructive discussion around it.
And how do you deal with those discussions? Because I know for me, I get questioned a lot about what I put on my plate. And aren't you going to have some potatoes? And aren't you going to, don't you want bread? And oh, that's right, you're always on a health kick. And I just think it's just how I've lived. It's how I've lived my life for my whole life. And I don't think of it as a health kick. I just think it as being normal. And, you sort of, it's easy to get into sort of a biochemistry lecture or something about what it all does. And, and why you shouldn't be eating it, or why you don't eat it. How do you deal with questions like that?
Well, yeah, I made the mistake early on that I got into this kind of preaching, lecturing, explaining role, and that's definitely not. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. So these days, first of all, my environment's used to it now. My wife knows what to get, for the groceries. She makes wonderful low carb cakes and desserts, by the way. It's out of almond or coconut flour and that sort of thing. So she's very accommodating about these days. And my in-laws, when we go and visit my mother-in-law, she knows now basically that it doesn't have to change too much, but she knows she shouldn't make so many dumplings or potatoes, because she knows that I'm not going to eat them. Everybody else will, but I'm not going to. So I just have the meat. She'll boil a bit of broccoli on the side extra, and I'll just have that, or a fresh salad with my meat. So my environment has now, after 2.5 years, got used to it. But when it does happen, I simply respond in a friendly, pleasant way. I prefer not to. I choose to eat just these items, and leave it at that. Maybe they'll ask why. I said, well, it's just a health choice I made a while back, and I've been sticking to it. And then if there's some real genuine curiosity, then of course, then you can talk to them about it and why that is. But just leave it like that. And then.
Very good advice, I think, because those are some of the issues that people struggle with, and they don't want to be confrontational when they go out, and they don't, they want to be appreciate the hospitality and all those things. So that's excellent. So what other sort of challenges do you find people come up against? I mean, with your executives, I imagine time is a huge issue, and I think that's true for all of us, whether we're a CEO of a business or whether we're working at a job and raising a family.
Or even at home as a house father or house mum. It's absolutely, time is always the problem. What I'd say is that when you start, there's a certain amount of preparation, that you can do in terms of food prepping. But my wife actually doesn't stick to a particularly low carb diet, but she takes her food to work because she prefers to eat her own food than what's ever available in the restaurant canteen. On Sunday, she cooks up a whole roast chicken and all the stuff she needs, portions it up for the next 3 days or so, and I get also for me as well. And so we've got a main meal for the next 3 days. So that saves time. Then, but when you're an executive, of course, it's not necessary. You'd be surprised how many like to cook, by the way, which is also a very therapeutic activity for mindfulness. So some of them do that, and another one managed to arrange during lockdown with a local restaurant. He didn't have time to really think about cooking lunch. So he arranged with his local restaurant that they would have always one option at their lunch menu. The lunch specials would be low carb, and they did it for him. So that helped him a lot. So the lunch was always quite easy and convenient for him to stick to his kind of getting used to the best way of eating and not having to spend a lot of time. And it is true that some people can find, until they start getting a bit inventive, that it can get a little bit repetitive. When you're saying a bit of meat or fish on your plate, add some vegetables and fat as per your goals, it can get a bit repetitive. But at the same time, when you really look at it, you can have canned tuna on Monday. You can have a pork loin chop or something on Tuesday. On Wednesday, you can go and have just an egg omelette. On Thursday, you can have just a big salad with some chunks of cheese and mozzarella and a really good olive oil dressing. On Friday, you can treat yourself to a beef steak, etc. Sunday, roast lamb. So that the variety is there, but you do have to think a bit more about it. It's no longer take a slice of bread, toast it, and put a slab of cheese on top, which can be so easy option.
I find that quite interesting because a lot of people say to me, they've done really well, and then they go, oh, I'm so overeating that. And yet they've come to me having eaten breakfast cereal every day for the last 20 years and cheese on toast for lunch or something. And, I struggle to think of a response because like you say, there is so much more variety in eating this way.
Yeah. There is indeed. I mean, there's millions of recipes out on the internet. I've been putting together. I've got about 14 of video recipes that I've taken, adapted, or whatever, and videoed, instructions and tips and stuff myself. So you can make really nice pasta substitute from using psyllium and mozzarella. And you can make a big batch and then freeze half of it, and so you've got it ready. And therefore you've got your pasta. Then you just stick on whatever you'd normally put on your pasta, whether it be chicken in a cream sauce or your pesto, or make up a bolognese sauce or something, as you would previously have done.
Except I would just say don't use vegetable oils.
Right, that's a whole chapter in itself. I agree with you. I mean, for that I'd use olive oil for sure. Otherwise I use all the tallow, lard, coconut oil, and that sort of stuff. But,
I just want to add in my little bit there about the vegetable oils. We'll link to your videos, so we'll put a link so people can find all your work online. And if you don't mind, I'd really like to just give a mention to Izzy Warwick and Estrelita van Rensburg, because they've put out a fabulous book, but they've got a great recipe book called Each Way to Health, Recipes for Success. And they've also got a vegetarian book out, which I can't remember the name, but it's just been released. So easy to find on Amazon, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. But there's lots of resources out there for people, but those two are friends of ours, aren't they? So we'll give them a bit of a plug.
Absolutely, shout out. Yeah, it's fantastic to have these resources out there published. It just makes it much easier than having 50 bookmarks, for various different recipes, in your browser. A lot of people like to have a physical book there, and I'm sure these recipes also are push again further what's possible from different ingredients to make tasty food.
No, some of their recipes look pretty amazing, fairly simple and easy to make as well. So yeah, that's really good. So what other challenges do you find that people face? So we've been talking a bit about time and being prepared, being well prepared with your food. I find it's actually easier to eat this way than it is to, it's much quicker and easier to cook and eat. But when you're not used to it, I can imagine that you're like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to have to eat? So being prepared, maybe making out a weekly recipe, sort of a weekly menu or something, as you suggested. What other challenges do you find come up that you deal with a lot?
Well, interestingly enough, the starting intermittent fasting feeding window, I haven't yet come across people who've had a difficulty with that. Well, generally they do it the way I do, which is skipping breakfast. So it means last meal at 8 p.m. or something, and then first meal sometime around midday the next day. But people haven't had problems with that. In fact, they found it incredibly easy, but also incredibly energizing and surprising that they're not starving by lunchtime. So that's an interesting aspect. I think the other one is what to drink, because we've all become so accustomed that what we drink has to have some sort of flavor, and when you realize that that drinking all these either sugary lemonades or even the other ones with artificial sweeteners is going to be detrimental to your health journey and maintaining metabolic health, then it's kind of, oh my god, what do I drink? Water I got bored with in 2 days, etc. But when you think about it, again, water is, well, first of all, you get used to the taste of water and you just get used to it. It's really nice and refreshing. But secondly, you can always add a slice of lime into, make a jug, get some berries, slice of lime, go get some herbs from your garden. And there are all sorts of ways of mixing it up. Coffee, obviously black without sugar. But again, once you start drinking coffee because of the coffee and not the sugar and the frothy lactose milk that you put on top, you realize you've just opened a door to an amazing range of different flavors, as long as it's not instant coffee or some sort of very bog standard supermarket coffee. So you've got, of course, all sorts of teas, whether they be caffeinated teas or non-caffeinated. There's a whole range of herbal teas and infused, and of course tea itself. There's the incredible amounts, whether it be Chinese oolongs or from India or Ceylon, etc. There's just an incredible range of teas there. So you've got this as well. You can mix that up as well, but I think that's one thing that some people have difficulty with is the idea that the drink you're going to drink is not going to have a strong flavor. That can be worrying.
And I think people like things as kind of a stress relief and as a way to break up a day too, so you come home from work and to make that space between work and then now you're at home, you get a pour a glass of wine, and then you might have some cheese on crackers, or you might have some, chips and dip, or maybe some chocolate or whatever. But it feels like you feel like you're rewarding yourself, and it's giving you that mental space. And so I think it's about finding alternatives, like you say, with alternative drinks and maybe snacks that you can use to create that same feeling.
For sure, and that can be, that's that emotional eating. We've got different appetites, and one of them is that kind of emotional eating as a reward for surviving the stress of the day. It's stimulated, again, it's hormonal. So yeah, if you're having troubles with that, then yes, swap out your cheese biscuits for some olives or for some unsalted, unroasted nuts. Just have it if you feel you need that. Alcohol, I have let's say a friendly relationship with, and while it's of course irrevocably bad for your liver in the long term, and of course it has all sorts of other things, like it's highly calorific, and it your body deals with alcohol first, so everything else you eat is going to be stored, and it also makes you hungry as well. So all sorts of things, reasons why you shouldn't have alcohol. I'm actually I'm very tolerant of that. but to the snacks, I was going to say is that it's not just swapping out the snacks. You can also find yourself a positive new habit that you can do. So when you come home from work, then instead of opening the wine and having the snacks, why don't you just go for 10 minutes around the block for a little stroll and still your mind, get some fresh air, move the body, if that's something you want to do. Why don't you go and play a computer game with your child or something like some sort of positive, pleasurable, relaxing activity. It doesn't have to be necessarily what you put in your mouth until you then go for dinner. But I would say again that the one thing that on my LinkedIn profile, you see lose 10 kilograms in 60, more than 10 or more kilograms in less than in 60 days. But actually, the most valuable thing that I think I give my clients is I teach them to listen to their feelings of appetite and satiety. Appetite, so they start recognizing how soon they get hungry, how hungry they are, what the hunger is stemming from, what's the trigger for that hunger if necessary, and satiety, so that they learn to naturally put the right things on the plate for their satiety. If they're still getting hungry in 3 hours after their meal, then maybe they need to add a bit more either protein or a bit more fat or a bit more fiber. how long it lasts, etc. What foods create greater satiety within them, what foods less, and start to learn, once you start doing that, after one, as I said, the emotional eating is either significantly reduced or disappears because you just don't feel like it. So a typical, executive who it's true the last 18 months have been very much different regime, not the morning commute to work and coming back home, and that finding that line between work and home has been extremely difficult to find, of course. Even more so, at least you have the door opening, door closing in the old days. These days, what do you do? But yes, so mark your day, close your laptop. Some people have found that they close the door of the room where they have their laptop, if it's possible, if you have a spare room that you work in. And then go and, give your family a hug. Go and spend 10 minutes on the terrace or in the garden playing with your children. Go for a little 10 minute strolls enough. I said, just to mark that closure of the day and prepare yourself for your next feeding. But as I say, very often people, once they're in tune and their blood sugar and insulin's on its way back to normal and their hormonal balance is far better just simply by changing the way they eat and when they eat and how much they eat, then it becomes very apparent what it is, what's going on. And then you can make conscious decisions. And as a coach, it's the core of coaching is the ability to be conscious in the here and now, so that you understand, okay, what is going on right now that I feel this way? It doesn't matter, hunger, anger, emotion. All right, what are the alternatives? What do I choose to do now? And once you've got that, you've got freedom of choice, which is ultimately it's freedom.
And you're absolutely right. Once you're starting to put the right food into your body, you start getting, and then that chemical factory starts working properly. The brain fog goes away. I mean, that's the thing that everybody talks about is the brain fog. The emotions calm down. I mean, it's an amazingly emotionally stable way to eat. You don't get all those hangry emotional sort of outbursts or needing to sort of eat your arm because you're so desperate for food. And then that does lead you to be able to make better, more rational decisions. And you might open the fridge and think, oh, I'd like that carrot cake. And then you can ask that question, do I really want carrot cake, or do I want a hug from someone, or do I want someone just to say, hey, good work today, or I understand sometimes life's pretty tough,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, another sort of trick is simply to have either an agreement in the family that these items like the carrot cake and the chocolate and the sweets are separated from the normal food environment. So they have their own cupboard or something for their stuff. So you're not confronted by it all the time. I know with the fridges, one client said, I'm going to get my wife her own separate fridge because she keeps buying all these sweets and yogurts and ice cream and whatever. So I'm going to go and get her a separate fridge so we can keep it in there. So when I open the fridge, I'm not confronted by this stuff. But these are positive, actionable changes that are constructive and lead to making simply easier as well. So if you've got space for a second fridge, either you have your own fridge or the family moves the processed stuff into that fridge, then that's a good tip, by the way, to separate it. And just not have the potato chips and the in the house and the salted peanuts and the Pringles and the ice cream, etc. And by the way, crispy, one of the easiest, tastiest snacks you can simply make is take sliced Edam hard cheese, Gouda, whatever your hard cheese is, stick 6 of them on a baking tray, stick them in the oven at, I don't know, 180 or something, watch them carefully so they start going completely brown. And once they're starting to brown a little bit, take them out, takes about 8 minutes, leave them on the side to cool a bit, and you've got a crispy, tasty snack that's far better than any Pringles you might buy in the shop. If you
there we go. I hope you've got a video about that we can share with everybody.
I do. Yeah. I'll put that up. It's all on LinkedIn. Every week I post. If you follow hashtag Thursday recipe, or is it Recipe Thursday? Oh my God. I just put one up today for pesto, which is not particularly low carb, but it's a really great condiment to all sorts of food. So yeah, and you'll find all my recipes there, or you'll get the new ones as they come into your feed, or I can just send you a document with all of the links. That I haven't yet got them on a dedicated website yet, but I plan to.
Oh, I'll make sure we get them all into the show notes so people can track them down. So just, would you like to tell us a little bit about your coaching services, who you work with? Do you work internationally? Do you work online?
Yeah, sure.
I guess in this COVID era, everybody is working online. So,
which was very interesting that happened. I know it's been, of course, a terrible world event, a disruptive event, and for many people tragic. But in my personal experience, it helped me basically realize, yeah, I work internationally. I'm based here in Czechia. I have Czech clients, but there's no limiting reason why I shouldn't work anywhere in the world online, which has been, of course, fantastic mindset change. So yeah, I work primarily in Europe. There's the one limiting factor is time zone, but even though with the US, and even I know it's your evening, my morning, but it's doable perfectly. So online over Zoom, what I do is we have first of all, I have a 60-day program that essentially promises you to not only lose 10 kilograms or more, depends on your starting weight, but 10 kilograms or more is almost certainly going to happen, and 4 centimeters around your waist. But primarily is the know-how about what to eat, what to prioritize in your feeding, when to eat and how much to eat, governed by your feelings of satiety and hunger. And at the end of that, you will have learned how to recognize those, work with them, understand what you need to do about them. Because I don't have a weight loss program. It's a lifestyle, sustainable lifestyle program. Okay, so if the client might need, 2 months is quite a short time, I may add the option of extending it by a month. For that accountability, that accompaniment, that we in between sessions, we obviously chat on WhatsApp and try and have questions. I answer questions in between. But that is the key thing. You're getting the key to a sustainable lifestyle that's pleasant, where you don't feel hunger. Actually, you don't have your cravings. You're fully in full dose of the energy you need, not just via calorific intake, and it's something you can stick to easily without measuring and weighing and tracking for the rest of your life. So that is actually what I'm selling in the end.
So would you like to tell everyone about your what your website is, how they can get hold of you? And I'll put those in the show notes as well.
Yeah, well, the most direct way is actually on LinkedIn. Okay, that's my profile. That's my main channel. That's where my audience primarily is. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm very happy if you follow me on Facebook. Roderick Lambert. It's my personal page currently, and I do post stuff there as well. Reach out to me either via the messaging systems of Facebook or LinkedIn, or to my email, roderick.lambert@gmail.com. And I'm more than happy to have a chat with any of your listeners, viewers, just to have a quick half-hour chat to see where they're at, what they want to do, and then maybe they can take away some actionable tips from that conversation.
Oh, that's fantastic, because I think it's important for people that there's lots of different options out there too, and people relate differently to different people. And I really like being able to bring such a wide range of people, that introduce a wide range of people to my listeners that they could potentially work with, and they might find someone that will really resonate with them. So it's nice to share other people's work in that way. I've just got one more question that popped into my mind that I should have asked a bit earlier, but and this is something you and I will both see a lot of. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but over here, the doctors really react quite negatively, particularly to the changes in cholesterol, which is a huge topic on its own. And so many people get told, oh, the doctor's pleased with my weight loss and my blood sugar and my HbA1c, and I feel so much better, but he said I should stop because my cholesterol's got a bit higher. And I say, well, go and tell him what mine is, but you know.
Yes, it's pretty much the same. Interestingly enough, I've noticed in all of various forums and groups and stuff like that people from the UK and the US are reporting much more frequently that their doctors are sending them for insulin resistance tests, which I've never heard of. Actually, I don't even know what an insulin resistant test is, but that's fascinating that it seems that the awareness has increased, and even some people come to the group and say, my doctor has prescribed a low carb diet. So that's amazing that that's starting to drip through and come through. Yeah. But here in Europe for sure, and I'm pretty sure in the UK it's still the case, doctors simply live with the dogma of total cholesterol. And when you delve into maybe 20 years ago, that was, well, 20 years ago, more than that, was perhaps a marker that correlates possibly with higher risk of cardiovascular disease and arteriosclerosis. We know now that actually, more importantly, is low HDL, high triglycerides are better markers. And you've got your video recently was very, very useful. So I recommend everyone have a look at that. Or there's even Ben Bickman has got videos out there explaining how it works. It's actually it's more about your HDL and your triglycerides. It's about your ApoB, which is kind of the one molecule in all your
particles.
If that's raised or not, etc. Then, and I think what to do when your doctor says that. Remember that a patient has choice in this. The doctor is not the keeper of your health. Actually, you are the keeper of your health. So if your doctor says, yeah, you've reduced your blood sugar, your insulin, your weight loss, everything's going great, but you've got total cholesterol, then first you can always ask, so doctor, explain to me total cholesterol. What about my HDL and triglycerides? How do they work with this? Well, if you think it's a worry, then perhaps I should go and have a CAC, send me for that, so you can actually check the level of calcium plaque deposits in my arteries, etc. And if you start saying, well, you're going to have to take a statin, they say, doctor, I choose not to, thank you. I'm going to get a second opinion, or actually, I prefer not to, thanks. Because the doctor, of course, has a dedication, a duty of care as his patient, but he's not the keeper of or she is not the keeper of your health. You are the keeper of your health. So that's how I'd respond in that situation. I had my GP. I went after I'd lost all that weight to have a checkup. Also, my wife was concerned about cholesterol. So I went and had kind of a checkup of my lipid panel, etc. And the doctor, she weighed and measured me, etc. Said, "How did you lose all that weight?" I said, "I swapped, carbohydrates for fat." And she looked at me like crazy. And of course, my blood tests came back with raised LDL-C cholesterol. But actually, I've been I've been monitoring my cholesterol for the last 20 years for various internal medicine, etc. Because for various reasons. So I actually have the records of my lipid panel over 20 years. And I went and had a look, and my LDL has always been raised. Simply, that once upon a time, a doctor was trying to get me to take a statin about 10 years ago. But what the big difference is that my HDL doubled now, and my triglycerides went below 0.9. And so I'm perfectly at ease about my cholesterol.
Yeah, because then that's a good proxy marker for saying you've got nice big pattern A LDL, like I talked about in my video, and put you at, they're fairly benign as far as we know. But
Absolutely.
we aren't giving medical advice, so we need to make
no, absolutely. And of course, as I say, every individual is the keeper of their own health. So do what you feel you need to do. Of course, but get a second opinion, for instance. I don't know, in New Zealand, is there kind of a database or map of, let's call them low carb doctors for ease, but it's doctors who are more aware of the...
We've got a few. So we have got some. Marcus Hawkins is good, and I did a video with him earlier this year. So he's up in the Auckland area. There's another one down in Christchurch. So there are some low carb doctors, and I think people can either contact me or go and seek them out. Marcus Hawkins has Low Carb Dr. New Zealand, I think, is his Facebook page. So people always go and check him out on that. But I think also cholesterol isn't a stable marker. It's quite a dynamic marker. And, so it varies quite a bit with, what you've eaten 3 days before you've had your test and all sorts of things. So I think it's just, and as you lose weight, sometimes it goes up and changes as well. So there's all sorts of variations. So yeah, like you say, just go out and get a second opinion and get, maybe get those lipid subfractions done and that CAC score. Well, thank you very much. We have been talking to you for ages.
Yeah, thank you. I hope your audience takes from it useful information, inspiration, also about how to manage change. I hope it's been worthwhile for them.
Oh, I think so, because we talk a lot about, what to eat, but I think there's other topics about how to go about eating it and how to make those mindset changes is just as important. So thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'll put all your info and contact details in the show notes and send you a copy when it's all done.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very pleased. I have fond memories of a trip to New Zealand 10 years ago with my wife, and we absolutely loved it there. It was such a different atmosphere than Europe. The friendliness, it was amazing. We do plan to go back one day.
Yeah, when we open our borders and let the rest of the world back in. But yeah, we look forward to having you come back. Well, I'll be able to get a reunion of all the people I've interviewed on my podcast, and we can have a big party.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be great. Thank you very much.